The sunset cast long shadows across the forbidden area of Callisto 6, turning the alien ruins into a fairy tale landscape of purple and gold. 8-year-old Theo adjusted the regulation safety badge his mother had pinned to his shirt, the one with bold red letters spelling, "Stay within designated colony perimeters," before promptly ignoring its command. He had spotted something scuttling between the crumbling pillars of the ancient structure, something that definitely wasn't human. Either that's my stupid cousin Martin playing tricks again, or it's a genuine moon lizard, Theo muttered to himself, dropping to a crouch and scampering forward. The air here smelled different, sweeter, like his grandmother's perfume, but sharper, more alive. His mother had explained at least a dozen times that Geo's Sector Gamma Red was strictly off-limits because of unstable alien tech, possible radiation, and a million other dangers, but Theo preferred to call it by its proper name, the Adventure Zone. The creature, whatever it was, darted around a corner. Theo followed, the soles of his boots crunching on the crystalline gravel. He rounded the bend at full speed, failed to spot the fallen column, and tumbled headlong in what appeared to be an ancient courtyard. Theo blinked dust from his eyes and found himself staring up at a figure silhouetted against the twin moons of Callisto 6. Not Martin. Definitely not a moon lizard either. It was a girl, or at least girl-shaped. Her skin was a luminous lavender that seemed to glow from within. Pointed ears peeked through locks of silver-blue hair that floated as if underwater. Her clothing, if it was clothing, shifted colors with her movements, from midnight blue to the palest turquoise. Theo sat up, brushed dirt from his knees, and stared unabashedly. "Are you a fairy or an alien?" he asked without preamble. "Do you grant wishes? I want a hover bike, a flamethrower, and a puppy." The girl's large, cat-like eyes, solid violet with no whites or pupils, narrowed slightly. "You are human," she stated. Her voice had an odd harmonic quality, as if several people were speaking in perfect unison. "You're very loud," she added after a moment. "How green." "I'm Theo. What's your name? Do you live here? Is this your house? It's kind of falling apart, but I like it." The alien girl observed him with an expression somewhere between exasperation and curiosity. "I'm called Nyx," she finally replied. "And you should not be here, human child." Theo returned the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. He learned to avoid the security drones by timing their patterns. He bribed Martin with earth candy to create distractions when needed. Each time he brought something for Nyx. More candy, synthetic clouds, she had asked, poking at the marshmallows, comic books, why does this duck speak? Simple games. In return, Nyx cautiously shared glimpses of her world. She showed him how to interact with ancient technology, holographic projections that erupted into three-dimensional star maps, communication pulses that made Theo's teeth tingle pleasantly. Once, they accidentally activated an old war drone, which Theo promptly named Uncle Boom, and tried to teach tricks before Nyx hastily deactivated it. Despite their differences, Theo's boundless energy versus Nyx's contemplative calm, they developed an odd harmony. Both knew what it was to be different. Theo, too imaginative for the practical colonial school system. Nyx, for reasons she wouldn't fully explain, somewhat separate from her own kind. On the 10th evening, they sat in their makeshift treehouse, a half-collapsed observation platform that defied gravity, suspended between two crystalline pillars. Above them, Callisto's twin moons painted everything in silver and blue. "When I grow up," Theo announced suddenly, "I'm going to marry you." Nyx turned to him, her expression unreadable. Then, with deliberate movements, she extended her pinky finger. Theo recognized the gesture from Earth customs he'd taught her, and immediately hooked his own pinky with hers. Something shifted between them in that moment. A covenant established under alien stars. 2 days later, Nyx was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. Theo searched every corner of the ruins, calling her name until his voice gave out. The emptiness that filled him contained a strange, new determination. "I'll find you," he whispered to the twin moons. "I promise." 15 years later, Theodore Matthews wiped grease from his forehead and squinted at the smoking maintenance panel of the cargo freighter Galloping Gus. The ship's ventilation system had developed a charming habit of randomly switching to what the crew called sauna mode, and Theo had spent the better part of his shift crawling through ducts trying to isolate the problem. "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" chirped a tinny voice from the modified toaster Theo carried in his toolkit. "3 times, Crumb," Theo replied, addressing the small AI companion that had taken up residence in the appliance after a particularly creative repair job. "The sensor keeps thinking we're approaching a sun, which we're not, unless there's a star hiding in your bread slot. Unlikely, though the concept of portable stars raises fascinating thermodynamic questions," Crumb mused before shifting to a more sardonic tone. "Perhaps you'd solve these malfunctions faster if you weren't spending every off shift in your conspiracy corner." Theo closed the panel with more force than necessary. It's not a conspiracy when it's real. His conspiracy corner was actually a repurposed storage locker in his quarters, plastered with star charts, signal printouts, and alien hieroglyphs. Coffee stains formed patterns that, with enough imagination, resembled Nyx's pointed ears. It was the culmination of 15 years of searching, gathering any scrap of information about the mysterious species that had once inhabited Callisto 6 and where they might have gone. Statistically speaking, Crumb continued as Theo headed back to his quarters, "you're more likely to marry a self-generated hologram than—" "That doesn't sound so bad," Theo interrupted, winking at a passing crew member who had learned to ignore his conversations with kitchen appliances. Back in his room, Theo tossed the toaster onto his bunk and turned to the latest set of signal readings. For years, he'd been scanning for anything matching the frequency patterns Nyx had once shown him in the ruins. The universe was vast, the signals countless, but Theo had developed algorithms to filter for specific harmonics that might indicate Ogeran technology, the ancient civilization Nyx had briefly mentioned. The ship was passing through the Epsilon Drift, a particularly signal-dense region where communications from dozens of systems overlapped. Theo was about to rest when an anomalous pattern caught his eye. A faint, heavily degraded signal on an obsolete diplomatic frequency, Assyrian protocol, extinct for centuries. Heart racing, Theo applied filter after filter, isolating the signal from the background noise. Fragments emerged, coordinates, truncated transmissions, and then, unmistakably, a name, Nyx. Hours passed as Theo pieced together the damaged transmission. Designation Nyx of Vayani family. Departure sequence initiated. Evacuation. 17 lunar cycles. His hands trembled as he verified the coordinates 3 times. "I'm seeing that about to hijack a shuttle. Look again," Crumb observed from the bunk. "I found her, Crumb," Theo whispered. After all this time, the next 36 hours were a flurry of desperate activity. Theo called in every favor, used every skill he'd acquired in his years of cosmic wandering. He collected on old debts, hacked customs codes, bribed a Martian pilot with rare Earth peanut butter, forged credentials, and finally cornered his cousin Martin, now a customs official, to secure passage into restricted Tau space. "You've gone completely insane," Martin said, reluctantly stamping the documents. "This is about that imaginary purple girlfriend, isn't it?" "She wasn't purple," Theo corrected absently. "More like lavender, with inner luminescence." 2 days later, Theo boarded the Flora's Intention, a botanical research vessel, disguised as a compost engineer. The ship's captain, a sentient tree named Barkley, was known for asking few questions of his peculiar crew, half of whom were various plant species. With the altered credentials and a crash course in agricultural machinery, Theo secured passage to the edge of known space, where Nyx's signal originated. The days aboard Flora's Intention passed in a strange green-tinged haze as Theo attempted to blend in while monitoring Nyx's weakening signal. He fumbled through conversations about soil pH and growth cycles, fixed a hydroponics AI with a wrench and a lullaby, which resulted in the AI developing a crush and doors opening too enthusiastically whenever he approached, and spent his nights piecing together the fragments of Nyx's transmission. The images were degraded, but Theo could make out Nyx standing before a strange vessel, surrounded by light. Words like council, departure, protocol, and exile appeared in no logical sequence. Once he caught a brief audio segment. "If you ever hear this," before it cut to static. The ship finally reached the outer territories, approaching what the maps labeled as the Ogeron Expanse. Most vessels avoided this region, known for spatial temporal anomalies and navigational nightmares. It appeared as a shimmering distortion against the starfield, like wet paint smeared across the cosmos. "This is where you get off, fleshy," said the Vine assistant that had become Theo's reluctant friend. "Captain says we'll wait 20 standard hours before assuming you've been turned inside out or whatever happens in there." Theo prepared the small shuttle he'd modified for the journey. Crumb, despite protests about self-destructive romantic delusions, had insisted on coming along. "You'll need someone with processing capability unaffected by temporal warping," the AI explained. "Also, I've grown inexplicably fond of your particular brand of idiocy." Theo launched the shuttle with a final wave to Barclay, whose branches formed what might have been a salute or possibly just photosynthesis stretching. The moment they crossed into the expanse, reality fractured around them. Colors inverted, sounds became syrupy, stars spiraled in impossible patterns. The navigation system began playing jazz. Theo experienced hallucinations of whales wearing monocles and his childhood teddy bear giving financial advice. Time lost meaning. Theo felt simultaneously 8 years old and 80, meeting Nyx for the first time and searching for her for centuries. Then abruptly the chaos ceased. The shuttle emerged into a pocket of perfect calm. Before them hung a planet like nothing in any star chart, pearlescent, carved from moonlight itself, and orbiting it, an ancient space station blinking with familiar patterns. The signal from Nyx, now strong and clear. Theo guided the shuttle with trembling hands, docking at a port that seemed to anticipate his arrival, extending connectors that matched his ship perfectly. The station's interior revealed Ogeron architecture in its fullest expression: bioluminescent corridors, elegant domed ceilings, crystalline panels, and floating spheres that followed his progress like curious sentinels. The air carried that same sweet char quality he remembered from the ruins, but fresher, more alive. At the end of a long corridor stood a silver door. Theo's heart hammered against his ribs. 15 years of searching, of holding onto a pinky promise made under twin moons. The door slid open. Nyx stood framed in the doorway, taller, with the bearing of a diplomat rather than the curious girl he'd known. Her lavender skin still glowed from within, but with a more controlled radiance. Her eyes widened in unmistakable recognition. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Hi," Theo finally managed, scratching his head awkwardly. "Sorry I'm late. Space traffic." Nyx's formal demeanor cracked slightly as her gaze traveled from Theo's face to the rubber duck keychain dangling from his utility belt. "You kept it," she said softly. "Of course I did," he replied with a lopsided smile. "I had a promise to keep." The smile that spread across Nyx's face, the first real one Theo had seen in 15 years, erased the distance between them instantly. Nyx led Theo through the station, past meditation chambers like architecturally impossible jellyfish and maintenance robots that chirped in recognition of her presence. They finally reached her private quarters, where Theo was startled to discover Earth books and, prominently displayed in a floating case, the tattered comic he'd given her as a child. "I had to leave suddenly," Nyx explained, tracing patterns on a control panel that adjusted the room's ambient light to match Callisto's evenings. "My people are custodians of Ogeron heritage, living in seclusion. My interaction with you violated protocols." She paused. "The elders transferred me to another facility, and eventually emergency evacuation orders came through. I didn't think you would actually find me." Theo leaned against a wall that seemed to welcome his weight. "You are my best friend," he said simply, "and we made a promise. I don't break those." Nyx laughed, a genuine sound that dissolved her diplomatic facade. "And what exactly is your plan now, Theodore Matthews? Now that you've crossed impossible space to find me?" "Get married, move in here, wear weird robes," Theo replied without hesitation. Obviously, Nix's expression became serious. The council will want to meet you. The light elevator carried them upward through layers of the station Theo couldn't begin to comprehend. The council chamber, when they arrived, defied physical architecture, a space that seemed both vast and intimate, constructed of light rather than matter. The council members themselves appeared as luminous entities, each a different hue and rhythm. Kawat tempet an wakwat bao. Without warning, a voice spoke directly into his mind. Why have you come here, human? Theo swallowed hard. To keep a promise I made. It might seem small or silly to beings like you, but it matters to me. The chamber filled with a harmonic resonance that Theo somehow understood as deliberation. Finally, the voice returned. Love defies logic, as does time. You honor both. You may stay on probation. Life on the station unfolded in a series of challenges and small joys. Theo struggled with the unpredictable plumbing system, learned to pilot gravity-free gliders, with several spectacular crashes, upgraded translation systems with Crumb's help, studied Ogeran history and music, and perfected the art of brewing tea that changed flavors with each sip. Through it all, he and Nix rebuilt their connection, sharing stories of the years between and gradually forming plans for both their future and that of the remaining Ogeran people. One evening, beneath the twin moons of their new home planet, Theo projected an image of the ruined courtyard where they'd first met. Nix, watching the holographic reconstruction, reached into a pocket dimension and withdrew a ring crafted from Ogeran threads. I made this, she admitted, just in case you actually kept your word. Theo laughed, pulling out his own creation, a ring fashioned from shuttle fragments and hope. Great minds think alike. They exchanged the rings without ceremony, completing a promise made between stars. From a log of the Flora's intention, human Theodore Matthews, formerly registered as compost engineer, credentials questionable, has established permanent residence at the Ogeran outpost with diplomatic liaison Nix Avayani. Crumb AI reports satisfactory integration and disgustingly heartwarming domestic bliss. Captain Barkley has added a commemorative leaf to the ship's observation deck. Their love story, improbable, radiant, and real, echoed across the stars, just as promised.